I can still hear her voice that night, soft, trembling, almost breaking through the crack of my bedroom door. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Her tone had that mother's worry, the kind that sees through walls and silence. And I, sitting on the floor in front of the mirror, froze like a thief caught under the light. The mascara wand still trembled in my hand, halfway to finishing a secret I had never dared to live outside my skin. The reflection looking back at me wasn't my mother's son anymore. Not fully. Not tonight. It was someone gentler, someone I'd been whispering to in dreams for years, a version of me that smiled without flinching. A version I'd buried under boys' clothes, deep voices, and careful lies. "Why, yeah, Mom," I managed to say, my throat tight, my heart racing faster than the second hand on my wall clock. "I'm fine." But the truth was leaking through the door, in the faint scent of lipstick, the rustle of her silk scarf around my shoulders, and the quiet click of my closet's forbidden side opening for the first time in months. Mom didn't say anything else. She just waited, as if she knew silence would make me speak faster than words ever could. And in that moment, staring at my reflection, my trembling lashes, the curve of color on my lips, I realized that hiding wasn't silence anymore. It was noise. Loud, endless noise in my head, drowning everything real about me. I took a deep breath, my chest tightening as if my ribs were trying to keep the truth from escaping. I wanted to open the door. I wanted her to see me, to understand. But I couldn't yet, not when my reflection still felt like a stranger I was learning to love. The next morning, I woke to sunlight creeping across my face. Mom had left a note on my desk, folded carefully on top of the same scarf I'd borrowed last night. The note said only one thing: "Whatever makes you smile, sweetheart, is something I want to see." I don't know how long I stared at it. Maybe minutes, maybe forever. But something inside me shifted, like a door I'd kept locked had finally opened, and behind it wasn't judgment or fear, just warmth. That day, I wore the scarf under my jacket. Hidden, but still there, brushing against my neck, reminding me that maybe, just maybe, she already knew. I carried that secret warmth with me through the day, even when people called me sir, even when I pretended to laugh at jokes that didn't feel like mine. Every word, every sound, every movement felt like part of a story I wasn't meant to be in. And when I came home that night and saw my reflection again, scarf still around my neck, I whispered the words I never said out loud. I think I'm her. I used to think my mother could read minds. Not in the way people claim their parents just know things, but in the way she would look at me and somehow answer questions I hadn't even asked out loud yet. That morning felt like that. She didn't say a word about the scarf or the note. She didn't mention the faint trace of mascara I'd missed under my eyes. She just smiled, that soft, knowing kind of smile that mothers use when they're holding a secret they're not supposed to admit they know. We had breakfast in silence. The smell of butter and toast filled the air, sunlight slipping between the curtains like it was afraid to interrupt us. Her voice, when it came, was careful. "Do you have plans today, sweetheart?" I shook my head, staring at my cereal. "No, just staying home." "Good," she said, and that was all. She didn't pry. She didn't push. But there was something in her eyes, something between curiosity and understanding, that made my chest ache with both fear and relief. After she left for work, I found myself wandering through her closet again. I didn't know why. Maybe because her clothes smelled like safety, like home, like the version of me that never had to pretend. I ran my fingers along the fabrics, the soft cotton blouses, the floral dresses she only wore in spring, the scarves that always seemed to carry her perfume no matter how long they'd been folded away. I stopped at a simple cardigan. Pale blue, worn at the sleeves. It looked gentle. I held it up in front of me, and something inside me whispered, "This feels right." When she came home that evening, I was sitting on the couch wearing it. My hair was still damp from the shower, brushed in a way I'd never worn it before. It wasn't styled. It wasn't perfect. But it was mine. For a moment, she just stood there in the doorway, her purse still hanging from her shoulder, frozen in quiet surprise. My heart started pounding so hard I thought I might faint. Then, slowly, she closed the door behind her. "You look comfortable," she said softly. I nodded, my throat tight. "It's yours. I can take it off. She held up her hand. "Don't." The word landed in the air like a small miracle. "I wore that cardigan the first day I brought you home from the hospital," she said. "You were so small, and I remember thinking, this is what love feels like." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. She smiled through hers, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was disappointing her. I felt like I was finally giving her a glimpse of who she had raised all along. Not her son, not the person she thought I had to be, but the person I was quietly becoming. She walked over, sat beside me, and took my hand. Her fingers were warm and trembling, like she was trying to memorize the moment. "I don't understand everything," she said carefully, "but I see how you look right now. Peaceful. And that's all I've ever wanted for you." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, pressing her hand to my cheek. That night, she made dinner while humming softly to herself, an old tune she used to sing when I was a child. The house felt lighter, like the air itself had stopped pretending to be heavy. Later, she came to my room and handed me something wrapped in tissue paper. "It's just something I thought you might like," she said almost shyly. Inside was a hairbrush, ivory-colored, delicate, clearly well-loved. "It was mine when I was your age," she said. "Maybe you can make better use of it than I did." I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down crying, not because I was sad, but because I had never felt more seen. That night, when I brushed my hair with it, every stroke felt like a promise. A quiet, wordless vow between us. She didn't need to call me by a different name. She didn't need to say anything special. Just that one look, that one smile, it told me everything. And maybe that's what love really is. Not loud acceptance, not grand declarations. Just a gentle space where you can finally stop hiding and be loved anyway. It started with little things, the kind you might not notice if you weren't paying attention. One morning, I came downstairs wearing a soft sweater she'd given me, pale cream with delicate stitching at the collar. It wasn't overly feminine, but it wasn't the kind of thing I used to wear either. Mom was packing lunch at the counter, humming that same tune again, when she looked up and said, "You might want to take my scarf today. It's chilly out." Her tone was casual, but her eyes said something else entirely. "I see you, and I want you to be comfortable in your skin." It became our language, gestures instead of questions. A borrowed scarf, a quiet nod, a softened sweetheart that used to sound like a habit but now sounded like belonging. The world outside our house, though, was different, harsher. One afternoon, the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Campbell, our neighbor, the kind who always pretended concern was kindness. She peered past Mom into the house, her eyes catching the faint hint of nail polish on my hands from earlier that morning. "Oh, I didn't realize your boy liked to play with colors," she said with that polite, poisonous laugh. How creative. I froze behind the doorway, cheeks burning. I wanted to disappear. But Mom didn't flinch. She smiled, not the warm kind, but the kind that could slice quietly through judgment. "He has an eye for beauty," she said simply. "And that's something the world could use more of." Mrs. Campbell blinked, unsure how to respond, then mumbled something about her garden and left. When the door closed, Mom didn't turn to me right away. She just exhaled, slow and steady, then looked back over her shoulder with that same unwavering softness. "You don't owe anyone an explanation for who you are," she said. That sentence echoed in my head for days. I carried it with me like armor, quiet, invisible armor forged from a mother's love. As weeks passed, I began showing more of myself at home. Subtle at first. A touch of blush. A different hairstyle. A change in the way I walked or spoke when I wasn't afraid. And every single time, Mom adjusted effortlessly. She never acted shocked. Never asked me why. Just simple, practical things. "Here, this shade looks better on you." Or, "You can use my old bag if you like. It's in the closet." It was as if she'd always been waiting for me to find the courage to be honest, not just with her, but with myself. Then came the school call. Apparently, someone had made a remark, Something mocking but not quite cruel. A teacher overheard, and the principal wanted to talk about concerns. Mom didn't even hesitate. She took the day off work. I sat in the office next to her, terrified. The principal smiled too much, his voice coated with awkward sympathy. We just want to make sure everything is okay at home. Mom's reply was calm but sharp enough to silence the room. Everything at home, she said, is exactly how it should be. My child is happy. I hope that's also true here. I'd never seen her like that before. Not angry, but unyielding. It wasn't just defense, it was pride. That's when it hit me. She wasn't protecting a secret anymore. She was protecting me. Afterward, we sat in the car in silence. She reached over, brushed a strand of hair from my forehead, and whispered, "I can handle the world. You just handle being yourself." I didn't realize I was crying until she handed me a tissue. That night, she made tea for both of us, and as I sat there, hands curled around the warm mug, I noticed her wearing the same pale blue cardigan, the one I'd worn the night she first saw me. She caught me looking and smiled. "See? We can share," she said softly. And I smiled back because in that moment, it didn't feel like sharing clothes anymore. It felt like sharing a life, one stitched together with quiet courage, one moment at a time. The first time I stepped outside wearing something that felt entirely like me, I thought the air itself might betray me. I held Mom's hand as we walked to the corner store. My fingers were trembling, not from cold, but from anticipation. Every passerby felt like a spotlight. Every glance, a potential exposure of the secret I had carried for so long. But Mom's hand was steady. Strong. Grounding. "You look wonderful," she said quietly, her voice almost drowned out by the hum of traffic. "Just remember, the world only sees what you let it." We moved slowly, side by side. I kept my eyes forward, willing my chest to stop racing. And yet, I felt something I hadn't expected, a small spark of confidence, like a candle flickering to life inside me. At the store, the clerk smiled when we approached. "Good afternoon," she said warmly. I froze, unsure whether to respond in my usual voice or the one I'd been practicing alone. Mom leaned in slightly and whispered, "Just be yourself." So I did. I spoke softly, carefully, yet each word felt like it belonged to me. I noticed the way my voice resonated differently than it had before, more aligned with the reflection I'd been studying in secret mirrors. When we left, Mom nudged me gently. "See? Nothing broke." I laughed nervously. I thought someone would stare or say something. Mom shook her head. "People only react to fear when they see it. You walked out without fear. That's all that matters." Over the next few days, our walks became a ritual. Sometimes just to the mailbox, sometimes to the park across the street. Each time, I wore pieces of myself I'd never dared to show outside my room. A scarf, a blouse, even a hint of blush on my cheeks. And each time, Mom's quiet affirmations reminded me that I wasn't alone. That my truth didn't just belong to me. It belonged to both of us. One afternoon, a neighbor waved. I stiffened. Mom noticed. "Smile," she whispered. "It's you. Let them see that." I hesitated. Then slowly, I returned the wave. Awkwardly at first, then more naturally. And when Mom's eyes met mine, shining with pride, I felt a warmth I hadn't realized I craved. That night, she prepared my favorite tea and sat beside me. "Every time you step out," she said, "you remind the world that being yourself is enough. And you remind me why I've loved you from the start, not for who I imagined, but for who you are." I felt my chest tighten again, the kind of ache that isn't pain but recognition. Recognition that courage isn't loud. It isn't flashy. It's quiet, deliberate, and sometimes small, like holding your mother's hand while the world stares. And in that quiet, I began to believe something I'd never dared to before, that maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to hide anymore. The first time I returned to school after weeks of hiding pieces of myself, I felt like I was stepping onto a tightrope stretched between two worlds. One was the world I'd always known, boys' jokes, locker rooms, classrooms filled with casual assumptions. The other was the world I was quietly building inside me, fragile and radiant, where I could finally breathe. Mom walked me to the front gate that morning. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of autumn leaves and possibility. She straightened my scarf around my neck, her fingers brushing lightly against my collarbone. "Remember," she said softly, "you don't need to explain yourself. Just exist. That's enough." Her eyes met mine, steady and unflinching. The reassurance there hit me deeper than any pep talk could. I nodded, trying to steady my own heartbeat. Inside, the hallways felt heavier than usual. Every glance felt like a test. I felt the familiar tremor of anxiety, the old habit of shrinking inside my own skin. Then I remembered her words, repeated in my mind like a mantra. Just exist. That's enough. I walked past friends who had known me as a boy, holding myself a little taller, letting my voice sound a little softer, a little lighter than before. Some faces registered surprise. A few narrowed their eyes. Most didn't react at all. And that in itself was a kind of victory. By lunch, I was sitting quietly with one of my closest friends, Leah. She looked up at me, puzzled but curious. Is that you?" she asked gently. I nodded, swallowing hard.
"Yeah,
"It's me." She didn't recoil.
she didn't laugh."
Instead, she leaned back and studied me, as if weighing the distance between the old me and the new. Then she smiled, small, tentative but genuine. "You look really good," she said softly. That moment, fleeting as it was, felt monumental. I realized how much I had feared being rejected for showing the truth. Yet here was someone willing to meet me halfway, willing to see me as I was. Mom's words echoed in my mind again. Just exist. That's enough. And it was. The day wasn't without its challenges. A few students whispered, some stared longer than necessary. A teacher commented on my change with polite curiosity. But each time, I drew on the strength Mom had instilled in me, a quiet, unshakable confidence that came from knowing I was seen, loved, and supported. After school, Mom was waiting at the front gate. She didn't ask me how the day went. She didn't need to. I walked up to her, heart still pounding, and she smiled, holding my hand like she always had.
"You made it," she said.
I nodded, tears pricking the corners of my eyes.
"I did."
And it wasn't as scary as I thought. She squeezed my hand.
"Good.
Because every step you take will feel like that at first, scary. But every step is proof. Proof that who you are matters." That evening, she stayed with me while I tried on clothes, experimenting with styles I never dared wear outside my room. She guided me gently, helping me choose colors that made my eyes pop, textures that made me feel alive. She didn't lecture, didn't judge. She simply observed, advised, and celebrated the small victories with me. By the time I went to bed, I realized something profound. My world was expanding, not shrinking. Each day I dared to show pieces of myself, the more the world and Mom made space for me. And that's when I began to understand the true power of her love. Quiet, patient, unwavering. A love that didn't demand I change for anyone else, but gently nudged me to be fully myself, every step of the way. It started with a small decision, one that felt massive at the time. I decided to attend the weekend art club, a place I had avoided for years because it was filled with familiar faces, old routines, and expectations I didn't want to meet. Mom noticed my hesitation. She didn't push me, didn't lecture. She simply offered me her hand and a smile.
"Go," she said.
"I'll be proud no matter what happens." Her quiet encouragement wrapped around me like armor as I walked through the doors of the studio. The familiar smell of paint and wood greeted me, along with the gentle murmur of conversation. I froze for a moment, scanning the room, bracing myself for reactions I could not predict. And then I saw them, the same people who had known me as a boy, staring, some unsure, some curious. A few whispered, and I felt the old sting of anxiety flare. But I remembered Mom's words, just exist. That's enough. I walked to my usual seat, settling beside the table where my supplies were waiting. My hands shook slightly as I unpacked my brushes, but I focused on the ritual, familiar, grounding, comforting. A classmate, Sarah, leaned over, her eyes wide but gentle. "You look different," she said softly. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Yeah, I wanted to try something new." She smiled. Not judgment, not ridicule. Just simple acknowledgement. "I like it," she said. Every brushstroke that afternoon was an experiment, not just in art, but in existence. I painted more boldly, laughed a little louder, and even spoke my mind when a suggestion came that I didn't agree with. And every time, Mom's steady voice in my head reminded me that her love and belief in me made me untouchable, not invisible, but invincible in my truth. When I got home, Mom had set up the dining table with a small celebration, my favorite snacks, warm tea, and a note. "One brave step deserves acknowledgement. Keep walking." I couldn't stop smiling, my cheeks aching from relief and joy. That night, she stayed with me while I planned my next week, small outings, chances to show myself in public again. She helped me think through outfits, hairstyles, and even the tone of my voice. Every detail mattered, and every detail carried her love, her protection, and her pride. Later, we sat in the living room together, soft music in the background. She reached over, brushing a stray strand of hair from my forehead, and said, "Every time you show the world who you are, you give yourself permission to grow. And you give me the privilege to watch you bloom." I realized then that I hadn't just been stepping into my identity. I'd been stepping into a shared journey, one where Mom's love and courage allowed me to stretch farther, take bigger risks, and meet the world with open eyes. And as I drifted asleep that night, the warmth of her hand lingering on mine, I felt a quiet truth settle in my chest. I wasn't alone in this transformation. I had her, and together we could face anything. It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The sky was gray, heavy, and the kind of oppressive that made every step feel twice as long. I had decided to attend a small school club meeting, nothing too public, nothing too daring, but enough to push the edges of the world I'd cautiously started exploring. Mom walked me to the bus stop. The rain made her scarf cling to her neck, and I noticed how her eyes were scanning the streets like a shield, silently preparing to protect me if anything went wrong. "You'll be fine," she said softly, pressing my hand in hers. "Remember, you carry yourself with truth. That's stronger than anyone's glance." I nodded, though my chest ached with anticipation. I knew she was right, but knowing didn't erase the fear. The bus ride was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engine and the occasional rustle of wet umbrellas. Every face I passed seemed to register a question I wasn't ready to answer. Will they notice? Will they care? Will they judge? I stepped off the bus and headed toward the school entrance. And there it was, the first sharp reminder that the world outside my home didn't always move at my pace. A group of boys from my grade spotted me. One of them smirked, a faintly mocking glint in his eyes. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Guess your mom's been dressing you up, huh?" My stomach nodded. The familiar surge of panic threatened to pull me under. My hands shook. Words felt stuck in my throat. And then, almost instinctively, I felt her hand squeeze mine in my bag pocket. Mom had followed me to the school entrance. She stood behind me, calm, composed, radiating a quiet strength I hadn't realized could exist outside our home. "Enough," she said. Her voice was soft but carried an unmistakable authority. The boys blinked, surprised, as if her presence alone had altered the rules of the hallway. "My child is exactly who they are. If you have nothing kind to say, I suggest you move along." I couldn't breathe at first. The audacity. The courage. The way she didn't hesitate to defend me while still holding my hand like I was the most precious thing in the world. The boys muttered and walked away, and I finally exhaled, letting the tension of hours, maybe years, leave my body. Mom didn't speak immediately. She just guided me into the building, her hand still warm in mine. "You did well," she said finally. "Standing here, breathing, existing, you were brave. But remember, I'll always have your back when the world doesn't understand." We spent the rest of the meeting carefully. I chose a seat near her whenever possible. My classmates still glanced at me, whispered, but I held my head higher. Every glance, every whisper, was a test I felt ready to face, because Mom's quiet strength was with me. Afterward, we walked home under an umbrella, the rain tapping softly against the canopy. I didn't say much at first. My mind replayed the confrontation, the fear, and the relief all at once. She broke the silence gently. "Do you see now?" she asked. "Being yourself doesn't mean the world will always be kind. It means you have the courage to keep being yourself anyway. And you are not alone in that." I nodded, tears pricking my eyes. I realized then that her love wasn't just support. It was armor, wings, and roots all at once, steady, protective, and giving me the courage to rise. That night, she stayed with me while I journaled, encouraged me to write about my feelings, and reminded me that courage is a muscle that grows with each small act. Each step I'd taken that day, walking into the hall, standing in front of judgment, was proof of growth. And as I drifted to sleep, her hand brushing my hair back like a lullaby, I understood something I hadn't before. The world may not always welcome me, but I had someone who would. And sometimes, that's more than enough to make the world feel safe. It started with small victories, almost invisible to anyone else, but monumental to me. I realized one evening, sitting by the window as the city lights flickered on, that I was no longer afraid of mirrors. I could look at my reflection and see her, not hiding in shadows, not whispering apologies to herself for being visible. I saw a girl, delicate, flawed, trembling, but fully alive. Mom noticed the change before I even mentioned it. She didn't comment at breakfast or during the quiet moments of tea. Instead, she handed me a little envelope, pale pink with my name written carefully across the front in her elegant script. Inside was a small note. "You are growing. Let the world see your colors." That note became my mantra. I clutched it during walks, carried it in my bag to school, even kept it on my pillow at night. Every time I doubted myself, I unfolded it, read it, and felt her presence steadying me like gravity I could lean on. One weekend, she suggested we go to the park, just the two of us, so I could practice being out without pressure. I remember the anxiety in my chest like a stone at first. What if someone stared? What if someone recognized me from school? What if I faltered and reverted to hiding? Mom, as always, sensed my thoughts before I even spoke them. She held my hand as we walked down the quiet streets, a gentle strength anchoring me. "You are allowed to be seen," she said softly. "And if someone doesn't understand, that is their limitation, not yours." The park was calm, drenched in late afternoon light. Children ran past, leaves swirled in gold and crimson, and for the first time, I realized that I didn't have to shrink. I could occupy space, the space I had long denied myself. I found a bench, settled there, and began to notice my own posture, the way my fingers brushed against the scarf Mom had given me, the gentle sway of my hair as it caught the sun. Every tiny detail felt like proof that I was learning to exist freely. Then a small group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. My heart threatened to race, but Mom's hand on mine steadied me. One of them glanced my way, curiosity sparking in his eyes, and I felt a strange surge, not fear, but clarity. I didn't need anyone's approval. I didn't need anyone's understanding. I only needed to hold myself together, with Mom beside me. She let go of my hand and gestured toward the path. "Walk," she said. "Show the world you are here." I walked. Step by step, my pace gaining confidence. The world didn't explode. People didn't stare in judgment. Some looked away. Some smiled. And for the first time, I felt a sense of harmony between who I was inside and who I presented outside. Afterward, we sat by the fountain. Mom pulled a small brush from her bag, one of her old favorites, the one she had given me months ago, and gently tidied a stray lock of hair from my face. "You're becoming," she said, her voice soft but full of reverence. "Not for anyone else.
Just for you."
And I am proud to witness it. Tears filled my eyes again, but they were not of fear. They were of relief, joy, and recognition. I had stepped past fear. I had embraced visibility. And she, my mother, had guided me without judgment, without fear, without hesitation. That evening, back home, we practiced small experiments. New scarves, a hint of blush, soft earrings that clicked lightly against my earlobes. She encouraged me, celebrated me, never once making me feel that my exploration was wrong. Every mirror, every glance, every whispered compliment from her became a stepping stone toward self-acceptance. By the time night fell, I was exhausted but exhilarated. I collapsed onto my bed, Mom's note still clutched in my hands. And in the quiet dark, I whispered a truth I had never said aloud before. I am her. I am real. And I am allowed to be seen. Mom's footsteps paused outside my door, then retreated. I imagined her smiling, knowing she had helped me cross another threshold. And as I drifted to sleep, the city lights painting shadows on my walls, I felt something I hadn't known for years, a sense of alignment, of belonging to myself in a way that was unshakable. The world could wait. I had Mom. I had courage. And, for the first time, I had myself. The first time I walked into the local cafe alone, I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, that old knot of anticipation and fear that had haunted me for years. Mom had driven me there, of course, parked nearby, and given me a gentle squeeze on the shoulder. "You've got this," she said softly. "I'll be here if you need me, but the world deserves to see you too." Her words echoed like a lifeline as I stepped through the door. The scent of coffee, the soft murmur of conversation, and the warmth of sunlight spilling through the windows were all oddly grounding. I carried myself carefully, adjusting the scarf she had given me, the pale pink blouse that brushed softly against my skin. Each detail mattered, not because anyone else demanded it, but because it felt like a declaration of self. I scanned the room, and for a moment, the old panic threatened to rise, the fear of judgment, the possibility of recognition, the weight of years of hiding. But then I remembered Mom's hand, her steady presence outside the car, her unshakable confidence in me. I took a breath, and the tension began to ease. I ordered a simple tea, my voice soft but steady. The barista didn't flinch. He smiled. And when he handed me the cup, he said almost casually, "You have a lovely smile." My heart nearly stopped. I had never heard anyone say that before, not really. Not without the weight of expectation or judgment. I smiled, awkwardly at first, then more freely as the warmth of Mom's encouragement surged through me. Sitting at a corner table, I watched people pass, some glancing in my direction, some not noticing me at all. It struck me suddenly, I could exist here, fully, and I could be seen without fear. I realized that courage wasn't just about standing against judgment. It was about choosing to inhabit your own skin in public, unapologetically. I took out a notebook and began sketching, little flowers, abstract shapes, colors that reminded me of freedom. The barista peeked curiously and asked if he could see. I nodded, my pulse quickening, and handed it over. He flipped through the pages and smiled again. "You've got talent," he said. "Keep drawing." It was a small moment, yes, but monumental to me. Every compliment, every acknowledgement, every simple human interaction, without judgment, became a brick in the foundation of my new self. Later, Mom appeared beside me, sliding into the chair across from me as if she had been there the whole time. "See," she said softly, "this is what happens when you let the world see your truth. It doesn't always react perfectly, but it always reacts to you." I laughed quietly, a sound I hadn't allowed myself in public for so long. I didn't realize it could feel normal, I admitted. Mom reached across the table and brushed my hair back from my face. "Normal is what you make it. You are redefining it every day." After that, we wandered through the streets. I tried a few outfits I had never dared to wear, skirts and blouses, scarves and shoes that clicked softly against the pavement. Each reflection in a shop window, each glance from a passerby, was a test I passed. And Mom was always there, subtle but unwavering, giving me the courage to step further each time. By evening, we stopped in a small park. Children were playing, couples walking hand in hand, dogs bounding through puddles. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, feeling the cool air brush my cheeks, feeling my chest rise and fall with ease I had never known. "You're shining tonight," Mom said quietly, leaning down to hug me. "And I'm proud to be here watching it happen." I rested my head against her shoulder, letting the weight of years of hiding finally slip away. I realized then that this was what love could feel like, not just protection, not just acceptance, but a quiet power that allowed someone to grow, to take up space, and to step into the world fully. That night, walking home under the streetlights, Mom held my hand as we had done since childhood. But it felt different now, not just protective, but celebratory. Each step we took together was a declaration. Each shared glance was a promise that no matter what the world said, no matter what challenges awaited, I had someone unwavering by my side. And I, at last, felt the fullness of my own courage, fragile, yes, but alive, luminous and unstoppable. Becoming herself. The morning sun spilled across my room in golden streams, lighting the soft folds of the scarf Mom had given me months ago. I sat on the edge of the bed, brushing my hair slowly, deliberately, feeling every stroke like a meditation, a declaration. Today felt different. Today I was ready to be fully seen, not just by the world but by myself. Mom peeked in quietly, her presence gentle but grounding. She didn't say a word at first, just smiled, that quiet, knowing smile that had carried me through months of fear and hesitation. Then she walked over, handed me a small mirror and whispered, "Look at yourself. Really look. This is who you are. Beautiful, brave, whole." I stared. My reflection wasn't perfect. No one's ever is, but it was mine. The soft curve of my lips, the gentle glow of my skin, the confident tilt of my chin. It was me. And for the first time, I felt no shame. Only recognition. Only truth. We walked to the park together, the streets alive with morning energy. I had chosen my outfit carefully, something I had never dared to wear outside before, a flowing blouse in soft lavender, paired with a skirt that swayed with each step. Mom walked beside me, not shielding me, not hiding me, but walking proudly with me. And somehow, that made me feel unstoppable. At the park, I noticed people watching, some curious, some surprised, but I didn't flinch. I didn't shrink. I walked taller, smiled brighter, and laughed freely at a dog chasing a ball nearby. Every glance felt like a confirmation. I belonged here. I had always belonged here. Mom squeezed my hand. "You've grown so much," she said, voice trembling slightly with pride. "Not just in how you look, but in who you are. And I couldn't be prouder to call you my daughter." The word hit me, daughter. It had once been a secret, a dream whispered in mirrors and hidden corners. Now spoken aloud by Mom, it was reality. A reality I had been scared to touch, scared to breathe. And yet here it was solid, loving, undeniable. Later that day, we went to the small art studio, the place where my courage had first blossomed. I carried my notebook, sketches spilling over with color and life. Mom stayed beside me, silent, letting me navigate the room, letting me be the person I had always been and always would be.
People noticed me.
Some whispered, some smiled. And I realized something profound. It wasn't about changing their minds. It wasn't about seeking approval. It was about claiming my space, about showing up fully, unapologetically, and refusing to shrink. That evening, back home, we sat by the window, the city lights flickering like fireflies. Mom poured tea, and we sat in comfortable silence. Then she reached over and brushed a stray strand of hair from my cheek. "You've become her," she said softly. "The girl you always were, the daughter I always knew you could be." Tears welled up, hot and steady. I nodded, unable to speak at first. Then, with a deep breath, I whispered, "Thank you for seeing me, for never letting me hide." She smiled, and in that moment, the weight of years of fear, doubt, and hiding finally lifted. We didn't need words after that. Her presence, my reflection, the life we were building together, it said everything. I looked at myself in the mirror one last time that night. I saw not just a girl, not just a daughter, but someone whole, someone brave, someone loved. And I realized this was only the beginning. The world was vast, unpredictable, and sometimes harsh. But I had Mom. I had courage. And I had myself. For the first time, I didn't want to hide. I didn't need to hide. And I knew, with certainty, that I would never do it again. I was her. I was free. And I was exactly where I was meant to be.